Now, I do apologize for the next speaker. I didn't really want him to speak compared to all the excellent speakers, but he kept badgering me until I finally had to give in. Actually, I have to thank the previous speakers because I can probably skip through a whole bunch of this material. I think a lot of it's been covered, actually, a lot of practical suggestions about how to improve your prospects for an optimal cryopreservation. So this is how you can be a good and virtuous cryonicist, how you can be an exemplary cryonicist. So it's tempting to think, I think especially the fix-it mentality, to think, well, okay, I've done this whole difficult process, I've arranged my funding, my life insurance, I've signed all this paperwork, I managed to pull in the witnesses. I'm now a member of Alcor. I can sit back and relax. Problem solved. Goodbye, death. Unfortunately, we know it's not that easy. As we've seen, all kinds of things can go wrong. As Anders just showed, there are all kinds of areas of uncertainty. We've seen all kinds of ways in which we can fail, in which we can have legal blockages, delays due to bureaucracy. There's an endless number of ways things can go wrong. What it's definitely a bad idea to do is to assume that there's nothing you can do about those risks. Many risks are not objective risks, they depend on people's actions. And maybe certain of those extinction risks, those existential risks that Anders was talking about that we don't have a lot of influence over, like if there's a gamma ray blaster, we probably can't do much about that in the near future. But with your cryonics arrangements, you definitely can. There's all kinds of things you can do. So I'm really just going to skip through a whole lot of these pretty quickly. You can see there's a lot of them, so we'll just go through fairly briefly. One very important area is health maintenance. Now, this is a little bit different for cryonicists than it is for the average person. There are certain areas of health that we want to improve on more than others in a kind of a strange way. And we've talked about the medical monitoring devices, and obviously that's a very important area. If we can actually make that work and use those things, that can make a tremendous difference. If you know you have heart disease in your family, if you've had tests that show you have a likelihood of a heart attack, you are an especially good candidate for wearing one of these devices. You can do certain things right now. So things like avoid diabetes. Easy to say. Avoid being overweight, but obviously a lot of people are having trouble doing that. So I was saying that some things are a little bit odd about health maintenance because, for instance, if we look at it cold-bloodedly in terms of the kind of response a cryonics organization can make, there are better ways to go and there are worse ways. So heart disease and massive stroke are very bad ways to go. Dying in a hiking accident in some remote part of the world is also a bad way to go. Dying of cancer, although certainly very unpleasant, is actually, from a cryonics perspective, preferred because generally the course of decline is somewhat predictable and we can prepare for that. So it may be that there are certain things you can do, certain supplements you could take, dietary choices you could make, certain interventions, which possibly could elevate one risk and lower another risk. So if you could lower your risk of heart disease, but there was some evidence that might elevate your risk of cancer, for instance, then you'd have to make a really hard, cold-blooded decision that, okay, I'm going to do that because it actually maximizes my chance of successful cryopreservation. And there may be such choices around. Now, we do try to keep up with members. Aaron mentioned the watch list, which I believe he implemented, where we find out about people's health conditions and we monitor them. We keep a watch list of members we know are at risk and make regular calls and check up on them to see whether there's anything we ought to know. Do you have any operations scheduled? Have you had any additional problems? Should we be worried? Should we send the team out yesterday? Those are things we like to know. But it's really, we can only do so much calling you. Now we have nearly 1,000 members, and as we grow, it's really helpful if our members proactively call us, and well in advance. I'm going to pick on a past president of Alcor right now, who isn't here to defend himself, but makes a good example. This is why it's a good example, because he's a very smart fellow. He ran Alcor, so he knows these kinds of things. He went in for a very serious medical operation recently, and only called us I think 2 days beforehand. It was just a couple of days. And at a weekend when the hospital administrators were no longer present. That makes it much more difficult to talk to risk management and to deal with them. So people do not automatically let us know. Even people who really should know better may not give us sufficient warning. So please, if you're having any major medical operation, in fact anything that involves general anesthesia probably is a good idea to let us know. And any major developments, let us know and we can add you to the watch list or at least have some reminders to keep up with you. Another reason to give us updates of your medical condition, treatments you might have had, is that it can actually affect the surgery. We had a case recently, the second case of this year, in which this is a last-minute sign-up, but somebody who'd actually applied several years earlier and then didn't finish the process. But it turned out that when we got him on the operating table and opened up his chest, and he was a whole body patient, so we were trying to perfuse the whole body, we found that the whole cardiac area was, well, first of all, had metal ties and wires everywhere, and the whole cardiac sac tore as we tried to get access. Now, had we known that in advance, it's quite possible that we would have skipped trying to cryoprotect the body and maybe gone straight to focusing on the brain. But having that knowledge in advance really could help. If you know you have serious blockages in major arteries down here that are going to make it extremely hard to perfuse the rest of your body, you might want to consider not only telling us that, but deciding whether you want us to try to perfuse the rest of your body, or do you want us to focus really on the brain. It could make a difference, it could save time, it could reduce damage. So some of these medical conditions actually can make a difference in the operation. And of course, it might actually change which of our contract surgeons we call on, if we know that some have more expertise than others with some of these problems. Keep your paperwork updated. I'm as guilty as many other people of this. I did my paperwork back in 1986, and it was many years before I actually revised all my paperwork. It's not quite as tedious as it used to be, and you don't have to do it all at once, but certainly think about things like, who have you made your power of attorney? Has that changed? Was that some childhood friend who's no longer around or now who hates you? Might be a good idea to update that. Think about the beneficiaries' power of attorneys. Contacts. Maybe those contacts have changed. Maybe some relatives who you thought were supportive no longer are. Perhaps we should know about that. Perhaps you need to get people to sign a relative's affidavit. There are a number of areas of the paperwork that it's important that you keep updated. And consider, are there forms that when you joined up, if you're an old-timer, didn't exist, or maybe you didn't bother with them the first time around when you signed up? Do you have a medical power of attorney for healthcare? Do you have a do not resuscitate in place for medical care? You don't necessarily want someone working on you trying to bring you back to life for a few minutes if that's actually going to damage your brain in the process. So there are a number of these options, and you can give us a call and we'll discuss these for you. Another one I would add, which I didn't put on here, but I think these days it's incredibly easy to do, and so there's no reason not to do it, and it can be very powerful. That is to videotape your wish to be cryopreserved. And there are, again, call us if you want guidance with this. I'm sure there are articles in Cryonics magazine that go over this, that give you specific questions that you can answer on videotape, such as, should you try to extend my life under so-and-so circumstances? At what point should you give me added pain medication? You can talk about those on videotape, and so if we have to go into a hospital and deal with a recalcitrant bureaucracy, people who don't understand what we're doing, who are putting up a lot of resistance, if we can not only give them paperwork, which itself can be very effective, using our legal capabilities from the UAGA, but if we can also show them a videotape where you're saying this right to them, they're looking right at this, it's pretty hard for them to deny your wishes then. It's going to really put the burden on them to overcome both the paperwork and the video. So anybody with a webcam can do that now quite easily. Put it on your website, on your Facebook page, send a copy to us. Wear your bracelet. I know. I hate the damn thing too. So I got a different one. First of all, I tried the chain, and the nickel made me break out. Didn't like that. Then I had the standard industrial style bracelet that Alcor's had for many years, which rattles around and, if you're like me, drives you crazy. So Michael Andrake, who I think is here. Michael, are you in the audience? Well, Michael's here somewhere. Yeah. Well, Michael was the first person I saw with one of these, and I said, hey, I like that. That actually looks kind of smart. Has the same information, slightly compressed, and it's on something that actually looks like you might want to wear. And it doesn't roll around your wrist. So if you want one of these, you may have seen, we have actually advertised these in the magazine, but a lot of people don't seem to know about them. Give Diane a call at Alcor, and she can tell you what they cost. I think part of it comes from Amazon and part from somewhere else. And we put that together in a package. So it makes it more likely you'll actually wear it. Or you can go to the extreme of Todd Huffman, who maybe he'll show you during his session, has tattooed instructions. Very importantly, talk to your friends and family about your desire to be cryopreserved. And I know it's easy to say that for me, because nobody's really going to resist that. My relatives are all in England, and my mother wouldn't try to stop it. She's always been supportive. Some of you, I know it's extremely difficult. Some relatives think that it's crazy and evil, or against God's will, or that you're going to go to hell if you do this. That's not terribly common that it's that extreme, but it's not at all uncommon for people to think it's at least improper, or just very strange, or it's going to make us look weird to the neighbors. And they may try to get in the way, thinking, well, it's not really going to do them any harm to be buried. Really? Why would that do them any harm? And you might say, oh, my relatives would never do that. Many people have thought the very same thing, and they are now permanently dead. In fact, just an awful case recently, when we were planning a trip to Europe to try and improve our capabilities over there, we contacted a member we hadn't heard from recently to check up on his health status, and found out that he had died several months ago, and nobody had told us. So don't assume that relatives will do what you want. Unless you really know, you've talked to them at length, and you know their philosophy and their values, and their perspective is very much in line with yours. Otherwise, especially, a different point we'll get to, especially if they have incentives that conflict with your cryopreservation, they may well not see things the way you want. They may not be in a hurry to call, they may deliberately delay, they may never call. The more you talk about it, the more normal it will seem, the more willing they will be to take action, and the more they will know how to take action, the more they will know about this thing. What do I do? What do I do? Oh my God. Oh, yeah, that's right, there's a bracelet. It has a phone number. There's a phone. Dial the number. Hey, that's pretty easy. So get them used to the procedure. And please try to get them to sign a relative's affidavit. Once they've signed something saying, I will not interfere, if they then try and interfere, it makes it a lot more difficult. One very, very good thing you can do, and again, it's easy to say, much more difficult to do, if you know your terminal, relocate to the Scottsdale area. Our ability to respond rapidly greatly improves. We don't have to do a remote washout and transport, and then the surgery, we can go straight to cryoprotection. It really does improve outcomes enormously. So it's one of the best things you can do. We have a good working relationship with the Hospice of the Valley and other hospices in the area, and they're used to dealing with us. They don't give us any resistance. On a completely different point, get at least one more person to join. Now, how does that help you? Well, it helps you because it helps us. If everybody here actually signed up 2 new members, and we tripled in size in a year, what would that mean? Well, for one thing, it would mean we would cut your dues, and the board of directors is going to kill me for saying this publicly, we would cut your dues by 50%. That's what I would at least try to make happen, because we have economies of scale now. We don't need to double our staff for double the members. Nothing near that. So I think we're actually at a point where we have economies of scale. So if you can just get a few more people to join, one other person, 2 other people, and we could grow a bit, we could actually push down our dues, which would further boost our growth, because I think it definitely is somewhat price dependent. That will allow us to survive and give you a better chance if we have that kind of financial strength and size. Avoid conflicts. I think this has already been covered pretty well in the financial session. Avoid conflicts in your financial arrangements. Don't try to split one chunk of money between Alcor and relatives. Try to divide it up if you can, and certainly try to provide for everybody, at least in some minimal degree, so they feel like they're getting something. Recently, it's been suggested another way you could help is to allow us to place a notice in your local paper. Local Hillsborough woman cryopreserved. Think of all those people who read those notices and go, huh, what's that? Google. Oh, that's interesting. I hadn't heard of that before. Many of those people may know you. They may be your relatives and neighbors. They may be your colleagues who you haven't spoken about this to. It just gets the word out there a little bit more. It helps to normalize it. Another one is help us improve objective feedback. We've heard a bit about this already this morning from Chana and from Greg. And Sebastian will be talking about the need to demonstrate that what we're doing actually works, that we really are cryopreserving people under good conditions. Well, there are some things we'd like to do that we haven't done so far, but we really could. And we need to work out the protocols for this. And you will be seeing either an article or a letter to members fairly soon about this, because there's going to be an argument right now as to whether we have to get your permission to do this, which actually we don't according to the paperwork, or whether it should be opt-in or should it be opt-out. But what we really want to do is, first of all, for neuro patients, is to do a CT scan. So we will detail exactly what that procedure will involve and how do we minimize the risks. But it tells us a tremendous amount about how well we're perfusing people under different conditions. It provides amazing feedback, which you've been seeing during the breaks. If you've been watching the animation of the CT scans, if you actually study that, it'll show you some great differences in how well we've perfused the brain. And the only way we can tell that is by doing CT scans. It's finally allow us to see what's going on inside. We would also like to take samples. From the spinal cord should be pretty easy and non-controversial. I don't doubt many people will get very upset about that. Probably more useful would be if we could take a little sample from your brain. I can already hear you going, "Ow, not my brain, you don't." But talk to Steve Harris. Okay, he'll tell you where we're going to take the sample from, and why you shouldn't worry about it, and why it's done anyway in a lot of brain surgery, and you won't miss anything. So I know that's going to be a tough sell, but that will tell us quite a bit. We can do other things like examine the surface of the brain for ice crystal formation, but actually having a sample that we can then really look at closely would be a big help. So that's one of the more controversial ones. Again, as I've been covered pretty well during the panel, plan ahead for inflation. Inflation, like shit, happens. People don't recognize that. The first thing they know is inevitable, because it happens every day pretty much. But somehow inflation, because it's something abstract, and okay, you see the occasional price changing, but overall, it seems to be so gradual. It's like boiling the frog alive, I guess. You don't quite notice it. But suddenly over time, if we have that even 3% a year, that's a doubling of prices every 24 years. That means every 48 years, it's going to be 2 times 2, and so on. So you have to plan for that. So either that means when you're young, buying a lot more life insurance than you think you need right now. Alcor's minimum is only 80,000 or 200,000. Let me get just that much, or a little bit more. No, try and get twice as much, 3 times as much if you can. Allow for inflation. And if you're not going to do that, really get serious about a savings program. Think about, are you going to buy some investments, some stocks, some annuities? Think about all the possibilities. Set aside for cryonics so that over the years, if you start falling behind the minimums as prices go up, perhaps with new technologies, you have a way of keeping up with inflation. Now, we've had some discussion at Alcor. Is there some way we could actually offer inflation-protected funding so you pay us and we invest that? That's probably not going to work, but we're trying to figure out ways of helping our members independently do this in a disciplined way. I think if we just have people do it on their own, they won't really do it. So we're going to try and encourage people to do that in maybe some kind of investment club for Cryonicist, where people actually have a program in place and sort of forced savings. The best way probably is to learn from the economist who showed that if you do things 2 different ways, you allow people from their salary to opt into a savings plan compared to people who have to opt out of it. There's a huge difference in the compliance rate. People who have to opt out, because people are lazy, they just go say, oh, okay, go ahead, take it out. I can't be bothered to say stop. But if they have to do something to initiate it, they won't bother. So maybe what we need to do is figure out some way of making it default that if we have some kind of investment club set up, that we automatically start, well, we can't really do it unless we talk to your employer. I'm not sure how it would work, but somehow we've got to make the default that you save towards the future of cryonics. So a lot of details to be worked out there. One more thing, let's see, is that ahead or back? Okay. Another thing you can do is, this is an easy one, persuade a wealthy person to give Alcor $10 million. Now, if all of you do that, we'll be in really good shape. Why? Well, obviously, there's some reasons for that. Again, one reason is the membership growth problem, the membership dues problem. Our dues are a lot higher than I would like. If we had $10 million added to the endowment fund, as many of you will be aware, we can only draw 2% from the endowment fund per year. That's a nice little trickle of income. That would probably allow us to reduce dues by, well, depends on what we're going to do with the margin, but by several tens of percent. If some of that was actually split 2 operations over the long term and the rest into the endowment fund, maybe we could cut dues by 50%. Think how much that would help us to add new members when it no longer costs 620 or 800 if you include CMS a year. If we could cut that in half, that would really help us to keep members and to grow, again, strengthening the organization. Okay, I'm giving myself a 5-minute warning. Actually, I can probably keep well within that. Attend local Cryonics meetings or start a local group. Lisa, our latest staff member at Alcor, is a good person to talk to there. She's been coordinating these groups. This is a good way, again, to make contact with people in your area, people who can keep an eye on you, especially if you start developing health problems, people who know that you want to be cryopreserved and know who to call. So it helps to build up that network, make you feel less isolated. That's more a problem for some people than others, obviously. If you live in one of our member-dense areas, that's not such an issue. And well, yeah, that's pretty much actually, I've actually finished slightly early. My goodness, I'm going to set an example. Contribute your skills or resources to Alcor. No, don't worry. Never mind the picture. We won't force you into a group hug. But there are many ways that you can become part of the community and actually really help things. We have Jerry Searcy, who you'll see around here, is our full-time volunteer. He's always around. But we have people who volunteer their skills on all kinds of different levels. For instance, this idea that Martin was discussing, it may be that there are members here who have specific skills in terms of programming, building devices, manufacturing, all kinds of areas, even developing the contracts with the people who would sell these devices. If we could draw on that and organize it, we could get a lot more done. And I think probably Alcor could do a better job of actually dealing with volunteers. We do have a volunteer form. For some reason, about 70% of the forms that fill out come in with nonsense letters filled in. I'm not sure what the point of that is, why people do that. But there are a lot of people offering their skills, and we need to probably do a better job of actually talking to them and finding out how we can organize that for some current projects. So there's a whole bunch of different ways that you can improve your odds. You can't just do the paperwork, maybe come to the occasional conference, that's all great, but there's a lot you can do to improve your chances. And I really want to see some of you guys again, not you, but most of you I want to see again. So I hope you will take these steps and improve your chances. Thank you.